Ladies and gentlemen, Shri Manohar Lal Khattar has joined us at the venue. He will be with us in just a short while from now. We're also expecting Shri Amit Shah ji to also be with us in just a few moments from now. But I will take this moment to invite back on stage Mr. Rishabh Gulati, Editor-in-Chief of Newsx, to continue a very riveting conversation that we were having earlier with Dr. Aishwarya Pandit, who is the editor and author of Indian Renaissance, The Decade of Modi, and of course, we also have with us Ms. Priya Sehgal, who is a contributing author to this book. I'm going to request Dr. Aishwarya Pandit to join us back on stage, and Ms. Priya Sehgal, a seasoned journalist and the senior executive editor at Newsx, to also join us back on stage to continue that conversation and give us a perspective into what inspired the contents of this book.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, beg your patience because Khattarji is here. We're just waiting for HM. So I'll just pick up the conversation where we left off, and I'll ask Priyaji and Aishwaryaji to just join me back on stage. The premise I was drawing was that there is a themology if you go through the book. And the themology is asking us to think a bit differently. Because in the end, we are the inheritors of this decade. So it's asking us that as a country, did we need a recognition of our self-identity? Therefore, did we have an identity crisis? Did we need to redeem ourselves? Did we need a catalyst for the change that, of course, all of us have to bring together? Did we need disruption? And that is the next premise, which is, of course, Priya's piece on the disruptors versus the inheritors. And these are all very powerful subjects, and I'm sure you can relate to them. You can immediately understand what one is suggesting that is the disruptor versus what one is suggesting is the inheritor. Now, Priya writes in great detail, and of course, she's been a political journalist. So let's pick this up. In this juggernaut that the opposition has to stonewall if it wants to win back the mandate, incidentally, even before the 2024 elections were announced, the PM had raised the game. He may or may not get the figure he wants, but the bar has been set. And let me speak upon that bar because something we saw that happened in January this year, January last year, in fact, a year has elapsed, was the inauguration of the Ram Temple in Ayodhya. We have been generation after generation assuming the worst about ourselves, that if something like this takes place, India will tear itself to pieces. That there indeed is a tier 2 nation. We've all bought into it psychologically. And then we discovered something new about ourselves, that actually no, what will actually take place is a catharsis. That this has been an issue that has been long sitting with us and it has wound up. Truth and reconciliation comes after that. Let me rope in Priya on this. Priya, what are we suggesting when we are implying that disruptor, which is of course a word that is used by entrepreneurs these days and used in a positive light, that a disruption has taken place or in fact needed to indeed take place?
No, Modi is the disruptor. He has disrupted the politics of old because, you know, we are saying it is the battle of disruptor versus inheritors. So in that sense, he is the force that came in and changed everything, which is what the book is all about. But Rishabh, before we go in, I would also like to invite Yashwant Deshmukh ji to the stage. Oh, yeah. He's someone who's closely been monitoring the cult of various brands and personalities. Good to have you here. But
good he's here because I was about to put out some data which is quoted in the book.
Well, he is the
not
data
to typecast you, sir.
Yeah, so just to quickly answer your question, Modi as the disruptor, it is, you know, politics of old, politics as we knew it before 2014, Everything has changed because of one man. At the end of the day, we had the UPA way of doing things. We had the way of contesting an election. Initially, you can wonder whether Modi won, or was it like the Indira Gandhi in 77, that Indira Gandhi lost because of Indira Gandhi? Or was it because they wanted Modi? Was it a positive vote for him or negative vote against UPA? But after that, it has all been a positive vote for him. 2014, he was still the unknown. He himself says, Delhi mujhe nahi janta, main bhi Delhi ko nahi pehchanta hu. But by 2019, Delhi ne pehchan liya tha, jaan liya tha, and Delhi loved him. India loved him. That's where it comes. You were asking earlier also, one more point I want to bring in, that what is he doing right? He is delivering, yes, but even when he's not delivering, even that is when also people love him. So it is the idea of Modi, the niyat of Modi. Apna hai, galat kar raha hai, lekin apna hi kar raha hai, bhool chuk maaf, that types. So he has become that apnapan, which is something which the Congress could not do in all the decades it has been power. He managed to do, even though he himself calls himself an outsider to Delhi, he became the insider, he became one of everyone. I think that has really been his biggest USP. But Yashwantji is here, he knows better.
Okay, and I'm just going to point this out, and a reference to context. So there's an article, one of the chapters is written by Jonathan Fleming, Namit Choksi and Vineet Parekh, and they are talking about the technological revolution. And our understanding of technology requires a little bit of reimagination. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about 5G penetration in this country that in 18 months went from 0 to 95%. Now, I know that this is private sector and everything is not BSNL and others have to roll it out. But the pace of construction, we all remember, and when I was just beginning my career as a journalist, that every time you build something in this country, there was a protest because land was the biggest issue. Now we see highway after highway being inaugurated, suddenly there is no land protest. Why is that? I asked this question to the ministers. And they say if you give people two things, better than market value for their land, and an opportunity to repurpose the land once the highway is built, they open a shopping mall, they open a dhaba, they open a hotel, why won't they share a couple of bighas with you? And then you tell them that if anything gets built here, you will get 10%. If a apartment building gets built here, you will get a plot in the apartment. Why won't they give it to you? These are fundamental things that have disappeared from our consciousness, which was everything in this country. We all remember what happened in Shingur, and here we are many years later. So let me get Yashwant Deshmukh into that conversation. Yashwantji, we have talked about the redeemer, the catalyst, now the disruptor. What is the disruptor or the disruption that has been brought in the last decade?
Well, I think there are disruptors by design, there are disruptors by default, and disruption is not something which you can do something like accidentally of sort. Disruptions are actually never an accident. I mean, look at it this way, good or bad, just like Priya just said, that some of the disruptions you feel like they are successful, some of the disruptions you feel they are not so successful. Question is not whether as a disruptor, it's not that whether as a disruptor I was a successful or many of my disruptions were successful or unsuccessful. Question is how the public at large is perceiving me in my role as a disruptor. Sometimes the public expectation is only not just of disruptor but to destruct. Public is so fed up with something that they wish you that, okay, can you please destruct this structure, the bureaucratic thing, the way, whatever, they feel like is something which we are unable to cope with. And what would be brought in new after that, that is not something anybody is prepared of. Sometimes people are so fed up that what will come, we'll think about that later. But can you please bring this down? So that kind of disruption. So Narendra Modi's legacy as a disruptor is one thing, but what amazes me more is how people own up his disruptions. And people own up even his failures as a disruptor. For example, demonetization. I mean, much fanfare, and we have been running trackers and asking on a very regular interval. It started with very hype and went down. Today, when we put up that question, huge majority of the people say, well, it didn't work. But are you upset about it? No, not at all. He did it with a good intent. So the question is, I did it, I was not successful, but I was able to sell the idea that I am doing it with a clear heart and good intent. So when the public in a democracy starts owning up even your failures, that is a very different level of trustworthiness that you have earned. Very different level of. And that not just puts you in different league, but that also gives you a confidence to do the next disruption, number one. But at the same time, in a very, very electoral way of speaking, the opposition is not in a position to nail you down on something which you have not been so successful about. I mean, at best you can go to the public and say, देखो साहब क्या बहुत परेशानी हुई, आप 6-6 घंटे ATM की लाइन में लगे, हाँ साहब लगे, आप तो बेहोश भी हो गए थे, हाँ बेहोश भी हो गए थे, फिर भी, हाँ फिर भी, क्यों? नियत ठीक थी बंदे की, अगले को बेहोश होने में भी दिक्कत नहीं है, आपको दिक्कत हो रही है कि वो आपको वोट क्यों नहीं दे रहा है. So if the person is not giving vote to you, that is your problem, not that person's
Okay,
problem.
but so let me pick up. Yeah, pick up on
I
the
want to
point. Yeah,
add
go
one
ahead.
quick thing to this is, when you ask someone today how elections are fought, how Naveen or Biplab or Mahesh, I think anybody would fight a Lok Sabha, the username is BJP, but the password is Modi. So that is how elections are fought.
Okay,
today.
yeah, true journalist, no, getting all the terminologies right. But let me tell you a different aspect of journalism, right? Because a few years ago, we were told by government that we are not going to do schemes, we are going to do cent% saturation. Now, we don't know what is cent% saturation. That means every house will have a tap, every house will have a toilet. So it's okay, the statistics come out that these many lakhs we've built, these many lakhs, we've all heard it before. So 2 years ago on Independence Day, I said, okay, let's commission anecdotal studies. We have bureaus everywhere. Let's find out. Now, like in India, anywhere you go, any mohalla, you will find Hindu families, Sikh families, Muslim families, and their reporter is roaming around and say, okay, have you got a toilet? They got a toilet. Does water come in the toilet? Yes, it comes. Now, it is a truism that up until that point, I have never put into my mind what it feels like to not have access to a toilet, okay? The only consequence we think is that if you're taking a long car drive somewhere, that we will not have access to the toilet on the way. Now think of as a woman, it never struck that this is such a fundamental core issue. So we are reaching for the first time, and we'll live to see it, what a privilege it is. Saturation. And what does saturation mean? Saturation means that when the house gets built, we have to understand that for a person in this country to get a pakka ghar, a lentil roof, is something fundamentally different in their life has changed. Their aspirations has changed, their perception, their confidence, everything, their standing, everything has changed. Then they want to buy a scooty or a two-wheeler. After that, they want better roads and they want better, better infrastructure. But something fundamental has happened which we've tried to crack. So, Aishwarya ji, let me pick on this point, right? Because one would assume, okay, that the principle of sabka saath, sabka vikas was that. So even when the opposition has criticism, which it should, is that's the job of opposition. On these matters, we have not heard any issue in 12 years. That discrimination happened in government schemes for any reason. It is actually a push towards 10%. And how does that really fundamental disruption?
I would say, as far as the opposition criticism is concerned, it is the opposition's job to criticize. So that is something that even the Prime Minister expects, and that is what an opposition does in a democracy. But the most important aspect is that why doesn't that criticism stick is the answer to your question with respect to the implementation and with respect to it reaching the lowest common denominator. The point that even Yashwant Deshmukh said about the fact that people were ready to wait in a line and they were ready to faint, people are ready to go up to take many other challenges, they're ready to do that all over again, and they're ready to vote for him third time, and they go on and on voting for him, shows a deep sense of trust that we are not going to be differentiated on any point as far as government policies are concerned. And that is why he spoke about that it is for everyone. Whoever qualifies will have access to those opportunities. Whether it is e-commerce and whether it is digitization and digital payments, it's for everybody. Now, when you go to the vegetable vendor to buy some vegetable, he has that thing which, QR code which you can scan. That just shows the digital penetration is to the lowest common denominator. Everyone has a bank account, everyone has access to that bank account and is using it. And everyone has access to data. So let's get one thing clear, Rishabh. With the access to data, you cannot control what information comes on people's phones. People can have access to the information and make their choices. So people are having access to all kind of information, whether it's government information, whether it's opposition information, what Prime Minister is saying, what leader of opposition is saying, what other parties are saying, and then they make those choices. So it's no longer that you are being led down the garden path and you don't really know. I think it's about time that we give the Indian voter also some credit that he's pretty smart and able to make those kind of choices. And those choices are enshrined in our constitution. So the availability of data allows him to go through the different kind of choices available, and if he's constantly voting for the Prime Minister, and he is constantly voting for the Prime Minister in the person of the Prime Minister, then it is the voter's choice, and we must respect it.
So the conversation, in a sense, is a translation in what it means for Indians, because you can agree with the politics, disagree with the politics, vote for the person, not vote for the person. Aishwarya ji just mentioned data. Here's a data fact. 20 gigabytes per person per month is data consumption in India. And I'm assuming most of us sitting here are using far more than that. 20 gigabytes, that means a gigabyte per day is being consumed in this country. Do the maths. Do 20 gigabytes into 800 million. Okay? You're talking about 10, 15 billion gigabytes being utilized per day of data in this country. When we say we have the population of Australia sitting on our trains every single day, these statistics is what makes India the force that it is. Now let's take it a step forward. Let me start with Yashwantji, then get Priya into this. So Priya, we also have Scott Faulkner is written in this book. Don Ritter is written in this book. They are also columnists and have spent time in government and advisors to former US presidents. Let's look at foreign policy for a minute in terms of a conversation. When we say India's stature has gone up, is it incidental because India has a growing economy, so stature will go up anyway? Or is it that there is a democratic mandate? Is it both, or is it something beyond even that? Yashwantji.
Well, I think it's just common sense. I mean, the common sense of keeping your country and your own interest first. I mean, diplomacy is all about that. I mean, that's the first rule. Right from the Chanakya Niti, it has been always said. Diplomacy is about your interest, serving your interests, interests of your people. And it's a common sense thing. I don't know why it was not being followed. I seriously don't know, and I'm not a public policy expert in that way. And I've been meeting and talking to several foreign services people. I even go and teach in the institute, I mean, on the foreign elections and all that. But I can give you a very layman perspective. I am an NRI, you know that. So I shifted my base about 14 years back. Now, what changes have I seen personally? Something which I can tell you not in data, but in qualitative way. Whenever I reach the immigration counter outside, the gaze of that immigration officer has changed. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes.
The gaze, simple eye contact, the kind of aggression that used to have, the kind of, the way they used to look down upon me 10 years back, It's a much softer, much pleasant tone about how they are talking about India. You are coming from India and like that. Now, this is, I mean, yes, many people might argue that it's about India, India's power and all that. But I'm sorry, I mean, India's power is there. I mean, we opened economy 35 years, I mean, right in the 90s. I mean, this should have happened. We have a huge diaspora. I mean, it's not that overnight कि NASA में 25% engineer अभी हो गए और Silicon Valley में सारे Indian बने. ये आज के थोड़ी ना हुए हैं. या ये तो मेरे भी बैचमेट्स के समय when we were in the college 90s में जो IIT से निकले थे वो लोग भी उस समय वहाँ पर थे. देसी के ग्रुप्स उस समय भी याहू ग्रुप्स वहाँ पे चला करते थे. अभी क्या चेंज हो गया? What has changed? What exactly has changed?
Okay, but has that translated? So when we used to have conversation and talk about India's past, all right? It was cool to talk about, oh, Plato and the Greek philosophers. You talk about Indian philosopher, nah, it's regressive. If you talk Indian history, it's regressive. But if Joe Rogan talks about Indian history, oh, wow, okay, wow, very, 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 very fascinating. Have we become confident enough in who we are and where we come from?
Well, I think it worked both ways. I mean, if you talk about the confidence of Indians in India and confidence of Indians who are living outside. So maybe the confidence of Indians living in India might have gone this much. Indians living outside India has gone this much. Okay. Now, that may have multiple things to do at hand, including the basics getting covered in India, like when India being looked down upon as a third world country and like that. Is still, on the paper, they still talk it in that way. But when you look at India, how fundamentally the things are changing, the basic things that are required, even in the countryside, how the things are changing, the infrastructure, the roads and everything, you know, that gets covered. By the way, including the toilets. And I have a different data point on toilet. Toilet, when we talk about the data point, oddly enough, and we only talk about sanitation. घर में toilet है कि नहीं, sanitation like that. And I had this funny data during the last assembly election of Uttar Pradesh, which is the biggest issue in your mind, everybody started talking about law and order. Now, when we reported that data, the big number of editorial people and everybody took it at like what? Law and order, मतलब वो मुसलमानों के घर तोड़ रहे हैं, इसी में लोग खुश हो रहे हैं. देखा या नहीं, this is not adding up, you know. Particularly when I looked at the gender thing, bigger number of females were saying law and order. I said this is something interesting. I started listening to the interviews and talking to my researchers. Then the female researchers started telling me, sir, they are saying law and order because घर में toilet बन गया है. And then I realized 90% of the unreported sexual crimes in rural India used to happen when the females of the household used to go in the field either early in the dark hours, wee hours of the morning, or after the sun has set in the evening. 90% of the unreported sexual crimes. Now, can you imagine a mother who got a toilet at home is less worried about the sanitation, more worried कि मेरी बच्ची सुरक्षित है. मेरे साथ तो जो हुआ, मेरी बच्ची सुरक्षित है. So this is kind of a thing that the journey where we have taken, when the things also, I mean, they tangentially deliver something else which was not intended to deliver. Toilet, I'm sure, I mean, हो सकता है पॉलिसी मेकर्स ने उस तरीके से सोचा हो, बट आई एम श्योर जितनी बार मैं ये बात बोलता हूं, मेजॉरिटी ऑफ इवन माय मीडिया फ्रेंड्स एक्चुअली डू नॉट इमीडिएटली कनेक्ट टू इट दैट वे. इमीडिएटली नहीं होता, थोड़ी देर में उनको झटका लगता है, यस यू आर राइट, यू नो. इट वाज एन अनइंटेंडेड आउटकम.
आजकल सब मीडिया को झटका लेने में लगे हुए हैं.
अब यार मीडिया में तो हम ही हैं, हम खुद ही झटके खाते रहते हैं, यू नो. दैट्स अनदर जोक पॉइंट, बट या यू आर राइट इन दैट वे. So when you look at the foreign policy and everything, this is one of the questions that we do in the MOT and tracker every time. Almost 70% say India का stature बढ़ गया है, you know, दुनिया में. Yes, I know there is a coverage कि हर चीज जो होती है वो बिल्कुल धूमधाम से दिखाई जाती है, but it's not just limited to that. This is why I said that I don't have a data to say because I did not conduct any research among the NRIs. But I can only say as a person in NRI that when Mr. Modi went to Dubai for the first time, you know, there was this program in the Dubai Cricket Stadium. my son was very young at that point of time and he wanted to see that. I said, okay. I mean, I called up my friends over here, got the media pass. I said, okay, मैं लेके जाऊंगा. And there was in the stadium, the media was in the center. There was no public in the center. Okay, only the media was in the circle. People were sitting like that. About 1/4 of the stadium was left blank, and it was completely thus 40,000 people inside, 30,000 waiting outside. 30,000 outside the stadium. All right. Because since morning, I have been listening to this conspiracy theory. ये लोग हवाई जहाज में भर के लोग लाए हैं. All right. I had to look and check. हवाई जहाज में भर के आए हैं, तो दिखने भी चाहिए ना भरने वाले. Now, only people, if you know Dubai's demography in that way, huge section of the chunk, almost 70-80% of them were either people from Kerala, a big chunk of them Bohra Muslims. You can look at the cap and the way what they wear. And I was like, okay, this is not even his vote bank. Because भाई मैं election का आदमी हूँ, मुझे हर जगह vote bank ही दिखता है. And then I tried to interview some people out there. They were not at all BJP voters. And they virtually had no intention to go back to Kerala and vote BJP. It wasn't about that. They were very clear. For the first time, we are feeling that India is being represented by a strong leader. Very clear. That we needed this perception that our leader is strong enough to represent us, strong enough to be there when it is required. And then when Sushma ji came in, I went to, meet her as well. And she was brilliant in her Twitter diplomacy and everything, The sheer confidence of every blue-collar worker in the Gulf कि हम फंसेंगे तो हमको उठा लिया जाएगा यहाँ से, हमें बचा लिया जाएगा. That sheer confidence of a common person, I'm not even talking about a white-collar person like me who would go and work in an office, run a business and that. A plumber, a janitor, a construction worker.
How much of that is a state change? Let me put this in anecdotal terms. You can keep heating up water and it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. But at 100 degrees centigrade, there's a state change. So what is a state change? We are at $700 trillion when it comes to our foreign exchange reserves. I've already mentioned we're about to overtake Germany as the 4th largest GDP. We are talking of Viksit Bharat. We are building the highways. When is the state change? Is it now inevitable that something different has happened versus the incremental growth that we have sort of got used to?
I think it's a state of mind which has changed. If you cannot respect yourself, the world cannot respect you.
Okay.
I mean, that's simple as that. I understand that people admire your economy. It's the volume game. You may have so many $1 trillion economy and like that. But at the end of the day, it is basic human nature. Please remember, the guy who is a president of another country, a prime minister, at the end of the day, he or she is also a human being. It's about the humans, how they react, how they see you. If you cannot respect yourself, the world is not going to respect.
So let me pick up contemporary politics. Priya, make a point, then I want to talk about, Donald Trump's latest comments. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, not Donald Trump. Can I just talk about international politics?
Yeah,
I wanted to ask Yashwanji also on the branding of politicians. Let's just talk about more immediate stuff, which is we've seen Modi, we've seen Kejriwal, we've seen Rahul Gandhi. So how do you see in terms of your tracker? Is whose brand is Modi's brand is still there, but is Rahul at least climbing up, or is the gap too wide?
No, there is no question of climbing up. It's a seesaw battle between Rahul Gandhi's ratings and other opposition parties' rating. Whenever Mamata Banerjee or Kejriwal goes up, Rahul Gandhi's number come down. Rahul Gandhi goes up, their number come down. But the thing is that if after 11 long years, the guy is still trending at unprecedented rating, number of people, ratings go down not because your popularity, please try to understand the rating business in a very different way. How many people think good about you is one factor, but how many people think bad about you, that is the real thing which brings your thing down. With 11 years of incumbency, if there are not many people, by the way, look at the vote share of the BJP as well. and look at the vote share of the other. Modi happens to be the only guy whose personal numbers are ahead of his party. All other political leaders, their party numbers are ahead of their own personal popularity. So that is something which is impressive. I mean, when I look into the global data, it is, I mean, I don't find anybody like in the current contemporary set of global leaders.
Okay. I just want to dip into that.
Yeah,
I think
in
Aishwarya wants to
this-
make a point. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say one thing. When Yashwantji talks about branding, important point is we have a brand Modi talking about this is what brand Modi stands for. Whatever is the opposition's branding, it is everything which is the opposite of what brand Modi is. But it is always in response to what brand Modi stands for. So basically what you see is we're getting to know what brand Modi is, but we don't know what the others are thinking or anything of that sort, because the others are building their brand on everything on the basis
Reaction.
of what
That's
brand
well said.
Modi is based on. So your response is everything to brand Modi. So then how do you then define yourself? We are looking for the oppositions or the regional parties to define what they stand for, but every definition stands in response to brand
That is
Modi.
so
So
well
it becomes very difficult
So
to
which
differentiate.
is reasonable, because
That's true.
Priya, we've seen from
Because,
Har Ghar Tiranga, then we saw somebody else going Har Haath Tiranga. You know, the people are following what they think is working.
No, on this also, I just want to add one more thing, is that niyat and the credibility argument that we were doing. You know, we had Rahul Gandhi talking about China. We had Rahul Gandhi talking about the economy. He was not wrong. Yet, even when you're right and people don't believe you, that is the credibility test. You know, here this Prime Modi, whether it is demonetization, their decisions people have not liked, but they are still saying, niyat theek thi. Here is someone who's saying something that, you know, perhaps is correct, but still people are not believing you because they don't have that connect. They don't feel that, you know, there is...
It's so true. Actually, Aishwarya, you made a very good point. You know, I remember way back, right after our parliament was attacked, during those days, we were in a different kind of a program where Indian and Pakistani journalists were, you know, talking to each other. And one of a very senior journalists in Pakistan, we were sitting for a drink after a late session. And he said that, you know what, Pakistan's problem is in its definition. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, you know, what is the definition of Pakistan as per you? I said, you know, Pakistan as an Islamic country, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not the definition is. He said to me, Pakistan definition goes like, Pakistan is, comma, what India is not. And that cannot be a definition of a state. And you know, what Aishwarya, you are saying, I'm kind of making sense to you, you know. When the opposition says, I am what Modi is not, that cannot be your definition. You have to have your own identity, your own program, your thing which you say, and it just doesn't work. Just because you are opposing Modi, that might restrict your vote bank to 15%.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay, I want to address two more things. We've got another 3-4 minutes left. Aishwarya ji, when we are talking about welfareism, right? Again, we get the statistics that largest ever 800 million people a month are getting ration. You have the largest ever, micro loan scheme under Mudra, PM Awas Yojana, Swadnidhi Yojana, which has now got thousands. Believe it or not, 6.5 lakh houses have suddenly got solar energy thanks to the latest Yojana that was launched less than a year ago. So are we doing welfareism? Are we doing Antyodaya? And is that also part of India's economic miracle? Not just the fact that we are going to be a $5 trillion economy, but the fact that that is going to actually translate to some material change for the people right at the very bottom of the pyramid.
Rishabh, the most important thing that you have to realize is we cannot become the fifth largest economy, or we cannot go further up in the GDP numbers if all of this welfareism doesn't work. If it is not going to work, if it does not translate to increasing use of clean energy, increasing use of facilities, job creation, and other things, we are not going to reach that number. So I feel that a lot of this has to do with the fact that there is a certain idea about what needs to be done to get to that number, and then what do we do next? It's just not about numbers or statistics or I think Modi's gone beyond statistic, and that's most important aspect of his timeline, and that is what kind of defines his last 10 years, and even if, when we are into his third term, there is a new kind of a model being set, and he's going on and completely unfazed by what others have to say. So I feel the Prime Minister is more perceptive, is also because of his experiences and his travel, his understanding of the Indian populace. That is why I think, to a certain extent, even other opposition leaders had to take on similar journeys.
So have
to
the issues
understand
then, Priya Sehgal, have the issues changed? Because the latest has been that, all right, let's bring back the old issues. Let's bring back the issue of religion. Let's bring back the issue of caste. That's what we experimented with, or saw the opposition experiment with a few months ago. Have the issues changed? Has Narendra Modi redefined what the issues are?
He is the issue, as he himself says, I am the issue. So, which is what now Kejriwal is trying to say, I am the issue. But Kejriwal, as I said earlier, is not being a Kejriwal. He's doing exactly what Aishwarya is saying. He is reacting to Modi. He's becoming Modi light. He is doing, so will you vote for Modi light or will you vote for the original? That is what the whole problem in Delhi elections is also. What does Kejriwal stand for? It was more of, earlier on he was a crusader against corruption, or, the welfare schemes. BJP has dented the corruption thing. They have now taken on the same welfare scheme. So it is, at the end of the day, the lines are really blurred in terms of how elections are fought, identity, ideology. You ask Kejriwal, he starts quoting Hanuman Chalisa at the drop of a hat. So end of the day, it's for the voter, the choice is, I don't know whether you vote for the, they're going to be voting for the party or the man or the personality, because schemes are all the same. It's just the branding and the packaging, which is where we come to the communication and the optics. It's not just that you deliver. It is, does the person have faith in you that you can deliver? Today, everybody is promising the same schemes, but my voter is going to say, who can promise the delivery? I mean, look at what Modi's done. Most of the schemes are from the UPA. He's just delivered on them better. Aadhaar hoye, rural employment guarantee hoye. They are all schemes from the Congress. He has just delivered them better, or people believe he can deliver them better. The belief in Modi, that is what is the strongest USP more than anything else.
Okay, so let me address that as the last point, which is Yashwant Deshmukh simply management. We all have little teams that we manage at our own scales. We all have our own organizations. And we know it is a challenge, it is a task, it is full of all sorts of trials and tribulations. Amplify that straight to that level. Have we seen a professionalization of management in this country?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there are problems in that. I mean, and when Aishwarya said that he is beyond numbers, and I tend to agree with her, because I think it's about changing the mindset. I mean, in more ways than one. More ways than one. And the challenge of management is also like that only. Like, if you ask me that, okay, one thing that you feel is Modi's legacy. I mean, whenever, as and when he retires, क्यों कहेंगे नौकरी नहीं है? क्यों नहीं है? क्योंकि सरकारी नौकरी में थोड़े ही हैं. I guess that the biggest change which we will witness long after Mr. Modi is not there in his role is that he is trying very subtly to change this Naukri ka mindset to an entrepreneur of mindset. In more ways than one, if you can connect the dots, you see the kind of things that he is trying to do in the speeches that the way he is trying to inspire. And when I say inspire, listen to what he talks to the kids, and you will realize that today, more people in the north, particularly in the north, I'm talking about the Hindi belt, there would be new set of youngsters, new generation, which would be looking at the probability of becoming a job giver, then and then become a naukri karne wala in that way. So I think that might probably come naturally to him, because we know that the state he comes from is in a state of entrepreneurs, but more importantly, in his policies, be it the micro entrepreneurship, I mean, come to think of it, when we started our work being a first generation entrepreneur, what were the chances of getting a loan without collateral?
Zero, none.
Zero. I remember when in 1994 I started Seawater, I had to take 286 computer, 3 computers on rent, एंड राकेश जी, एक कंप्यूटर उस समय 45,000 का था. आप
That
इस
was
बात
the
के
cost of a
गवाह
Maruti car
हैं.
at that time. Yes.
3-3 हजार रुपए महीने पे मैंने 3 कंप्यूटर किराए पे लिए थे, लेकिन 3 साल तक मैं एक कंप्यूटर खरीद नहीं पाया था, क्योंकि whenever I went to a bank, the bank simply asked for a collateral, and I am like, boss, if I had something to give a collateral on, why the bloody I will come to you if I have money with me. So from that thing, when I started, I used to consider India as a graveyard of entrepreneurs, first generation entrepreneurs, to a situation right now where I see so many, particularly female entrepreneurs, using the micro loan, I mean, like that, those kind of schemes, and spurting of the small enterprise all around. That gives me immense hope. And the question of joblessness is something which a lot of debate will happen on how we map jobs, or how we define the jobs.
Okay.
That's a different thing. But I think the mindset of changing the mindset from naukri खोजने वाला और नौकरी देने वाला,
Okay.
that is something
Okay,
which
let
will be
me
the
snap this
legacy.
straight back to very recent current events. And Priya, let me pick up this thought before I bring Aishwarya into this. So we've seen a US presidential election, and a lot of us still measure our foreign policy by how the Americans treat you. And what we saw on television is that they put the representative of the Prime Minister front and center, right there, Dr. Jaishankar sitting there. And just yesterday, Donald Trump is speaking, and of course, he's speaking about his trade issues and what he wants to fix. But he's going, very sharp guy. I'm going to meet him next week, very sharp guy. Okay? So, is Donald Trump, who does not mince his words at all, is it that's just a rapport that's been established, or it's an actuality that this person is standing up for their own country and they're going to negotiate with me as much as I'm going to negotiate with them?
I'm not an expert on foreign policy, Rishabh. Foreign policy is a bit of both. One is, of course, the institution and the country where you stand. Because, Prime Minister Modi may be a very nice guy, but if India is of no use to the US, Donald Trump is not going to pick up the phone and call. But here it is the chemistry as well as the actuality of where India is. India is at a place where the US does need us, where is geopolitical calculations. But the chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump was not there with the previous establishment also. So there is a chemistry that is going to be working in our favor also at the end of the day. It's a bit of both. I think we have to now wrap up, Rishabh.
Okay, all right. Thanks, great. That's the signal coming from that side because I can't look beyond my shoulder. Thank you for your patience and diligence. I love doing this. I do it for a living. So we'll hand over now back to Devika. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Rishabh, for moderating that session. Thank you so much, Dr. Aishwarya Pandit, for being with us and for giving us that insight. Ms. Priya Sehgal and Mr. Yashwant Deshmukh for joining us.